That's a very difficult question because our political systems, our democratic political systems, are organized and generate incentives to make decisions that are local in the sense of representing the preferences of a particular community that has the right to vote in a particular election. They are very directed towards the short term because we have elections every 4 years or every 5 years, and voters tend to think about what have you done for me lately. And the combination of these two features, so the local nature of any democracy and the short-term incentives to provide people with what they want now, these are very inimical of finding solutions for the kind of problems that you mentioned. So for example, if a particular policy has effects that go beyond the community, of course the people who are affected by those policies, not all of them can vote, not all of them can hold rulers accountable because some of them are outside the city, outside the region, outside the country. And in the same way, if voters only care about the short term, if they care about what have you done for me lately, and then they think about it again 4 years later, the policies that governments, local or national, have incentives to pursue are the policies that deal with the short term and not the long term. So again, this is why I think the question is very difficult, because it goes to the heart of the way our political systems work, and it's not easy to find alternatives to the way our political systems work that are democratic and liberal in the sense that they represent people's wishes and that they hold rulers accountable in the context of freedom. I don't think, one of the concerns that I have is that because of the difficulties that democracies have in addressing long-term problems and addressing them with efficient solutions, one of the concerns that I have is that people start losing faith in democracy itself and start considering either more populist solutions, let's hear what the people want right now, in referendums and that sorts of instruments. I don't think that's, for reasons that I think are clear, are necessarily the best responses. But there's another very alluring response, which is let's leave decisions to experts. Let the people who really know about things decide. And this is a reaction that I think we are increasingly finding, for example, in addressing issues such as climate change. People, they don't think about these things, they don't know, they can be manipulated. Experts need to decide, the people who know, the scientists. I'm a social scientist, so I'm sympathetic to science, but I don't think that polities can be organized in that way, because in the past, as we know, knowledge and expertise and technocracy was very often not so much an instrument for efficient policies, but an instrument for domination of some people over other people. So again, this is the conundrum that we have. I think, however, that within the framework of liberal democracy, we have good examples of how to change some of these constraints. We know, for example, that in political systems that are more transparent, that give more information to people about how government is run, that people tend to change their outlook about the long term and the short term. I did some work with some colleagues from the University of Minho about local policies, municipal policies. And we show that the more transparent local government is, the less people tend to reward, for example, wage increases or increases in short-term expenditures or deficit increases. And they start rewarding electorally other sorts of measures, for example, related to education, that don't produce immediate benefits, but produce benefits in the long term. So my tentative and very incomplete and uncertain answer to this problem is that if governments are more transparent, if governments don't assume people are myopic and give them the information, people will do something with that information. People will consider the costs of some policies that provide benefits in the short run and consider the benefits of policies that provide benefits in the long run. But this is, to finalize, this is very difficult because this also requires voters to trust governments. So if I'm, a mayor and I tell them, there's a part of our budget that instead of building, more roads, or instead of building parking lots, or instead of increasing, wages for public servants, we are going to invest in something, for example, education, or we're going to invest in something, for example, environmentally friendly policies, that you won't see the returns and the benefits tomorrow. You won't see it in 40 years, you'll see it in 10 years or 20 years. For voters to reward this, they need to trust politicians. And this also means that politicians need to give people reasons for them to trust them. Being transparent, being fair, being inclusive are the signs that generate that trust. But in many cases, we also find that politicians do not behave in a way that allow people to say, okay, I believe that what you're doing will only provide me benefits in 10 years or 20 years, and therefore I'll support you. There has to be a relationship of trust between politicians and the public for long-term policies to be adopted and rewarded electorally, for the right incentives to align. And that, I think, is one of my concerns. I think that we are not very close overall in our country and in other countries to that situation.